Welcome to the class Q&A. First, I'm going to go over some information in the class, just to remind you of some features that you may not have looked at yet, and to talk a little bit about the final project. I want to say that I've been really impressed with the quality of the discussion and how much you guys are getting into Scratch programming. I'm excited to see that. So first, I'm going to show some things about the class, and then I will switch to Scratch and demonstrate some things that people have mentioned wanting to be able to do in some of your forums. I do want to remind you though that don't get frustrated if some of the things you want to do seem pretty complicated right now, because you're not expected to be experienced scratchers yet, and it takes a while to get familiar with some of the blocks and what they can do. But it looks to me like you guys are all doing a good job of looking inside and trying to figure out what some of the blocks are doing and how to change them on your remixes. First thing I want to point out is under course information, there is course links, which is a Google Doc of lists used throughout the course. If you come across some links for things that you think are outstanding, please email me, and if you encounter any links that don't work, notify me. I go through this about 2 to 3 times a year and check the links, make sure things are still working, and add things. I've got information about standards here. They're also in the course. Various Scratch resources like the Wiki and Creative Computing Guides and Scratch Ed. The Content Area Studios, I've got that information in the course too. Some curriculum resources, and then some resources on coding in general, rubrics and assessment links, and then articles and research. And some of these are the ones that were listed in the course, and some are some additional ones. And I tried to find current information to put up there whenever possible. So again, if you find a link that's not working, or you have a resource that you would recommend, send it to me and I'll get it put up on here. Another thing, you guys may be aware of this, but you can check your grades at any time. There's lots of different things that we're doing, but a quick way to see where you're at in the course are the grades. I'm logged in as a student right now, so if I go over to the side under the navigation, I can click and look at my grades, and it will flip me to a screen that shows all of the assignments and my current grade in there. And since I'm not doing the assignments right now, it will show 0. Anything that you have graded will show a grade here. If there's a problem or I've missed something, don't hesitate to email me and ask about it. I try to keep on top of this by going in a couple times a day and grading. But sometimes I might miss a forum posting, or I might get a little bit behind. Like this weekend, I've got my grandkids visiting, and we had a full house yesterday, so I didn't get on the course as much as I would normally do that. So that's where you can check how you're doing. And let's go back and we'll look at the final project. We're getting closer to the midpoint of the class, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. Everybody's working on things quite well. If it does get to be a problem when we get near the end, I know things do come up, but feel free to let me know, because if you need a couple days extensions, that's not a problem for me. So if somebody gets sick or something comes up, let me know and we'll work something out. The last topic is where you're going to be working on an implementation plan. And I want to point out, if you're not in a regular teaching assignment, some of you are kind of like tech facilitators, so you might work with different groups. And so if you're not in a particular classroom, you can kind of make this about a classroom that you know, or maybe a classroom that you would like to work in, like maybe if you're an elementary teacher, an upper elementary or a lower elementary. So don't worry if you don't have a class that you're going to actually be doing this with. Or like if you're at a district level, you might be thinking about doing this in more than one classroom. But try to keep it simple. If you have any questions about that part of the assignment, let me know. But in this course, you'll go through code.org, which is a great resource to help with learning coding, and kind of a good way to get kids interested and up to scratch. We'll be using the Creative Computing Scratch Curriculum Guide. You'll be reading part of this and looking at lessons from this. This is another great resource. It also, there's a companion one, the Creative Computing Learner Workbook, where you can print out pages for your students. Then you're going to do an assignment with the Creative Computing Scratch Curriculum Guide. You're going to look at roadblocks that you might have to deal with. And again, if you're not in an actual classroom right now, you might base this on roadblocks that you've seen in classrooms that you've been in or have experienced with. Then you'll come up with an implementation plan. You'll also come up with a project to go along with your plan, kind of like a sample project that would show what students would be doing, or it might be a starter project that you would use with your students. Finally, in here, you're going to go on the forum for the discussion and share the information about your plan and your project with your classmates. This would be could be a summary of your implementation plan, or if you want to, you could attach your implementation plan to this and give a short explanation of it. And then you'll have a chance to respond to other people's plans. And once you're completely done with the course, you can do the post-survey, the post-course survey. And anywhere in this process, if you have any questions, let me know. So hopefully this is pretty clear to you. I do want to just look briefly at the implementation plan assignment just to give you an idea of that, the scope of that one. So you're going to be reading information about developing an implementation plan in this course, and then you're going to complete the Creative Computing Curriculum Guide assignment and develop your own plan. And I've got a kind of an implementation plan template for you to use, and you can add to this as you see. It's a Google Doc. So the red parts are the instructions on it, and then you could just put information under each of these sections. Again, when you look at this, if you have any questions about any part of this, feel free to let me know and communicate with me. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to Scratch and go over a few little things that can help make your life easier in Scratch. Hello, a couple of things have come up when people have been working with Scratch, and so I just want to demo some things. Part of this is a review of some of the information, and other is just kind of pointing out some of the little idiosyncrasies of Scratch. One thing that came up was somebody was talking about a game where they were wanting the soccer ball to go through the goalpost. And I've started a project here that's very, very simplified version of it. I have the Scratch Cat here, and I have one sprite that I drew in the paint editor, and I just drew a simple rectangle. Then to make another one just the same size, I duplicated it. And to keep track of which one is which as I'm doing this, I went into the second sprite, went to costumes, and then changed the color of it to red so it's easier to see what's going on. And I'm going to show you what it does first, and then show you the different blocks that made this possible. So I'm going to click my green flag to start the animation, and as the Scratch Cat walks around, he's going actually between these two objects. So if you had a background that was soccer goals, you could create an object like a rectangle to place over one of the goals. You could also make it very like a faint outline and no fill, so it didn't really show up, but it's an object that you can place on a layer, because layers are what allow you to have the cat go between these two objects. So we'll look at the script for this sprite, which is one of the goal posts. It says when green flag clicked, go to front. So we want to make sure this sprite is on the front. We're kind of thinking of layers of a sandwich here. This sprite is going to go back 2 layers, because this will be front, this will be the next layer, and this will be the last layer. So now when we look at the cat, when clicked, he goes back 1 layer. Again, this one went back 2 layers, that goalpost. The cat goes back 1 layer. And then I've got a repeat block in here with a movement. He's moving 10 steps. I've got a little weight in there, and then he goes to the next costume. It was looking a little jerky, so I'm going to change the wait time from half a second to a quarter of a second, which would be 0.25. And you can play around with this when you're doing your animations. So now I'm going to start it again. Oh, look what happened. My sprite is starting here. That's another thing that has come up in some of the discussions, is having the sprite be in a certain position whenever you start. So it's going to look silly if he starts from there. So I want him to start back here. And to make sure he always starts back there, I'm going to go to my motion block, and I am going to have him go to his current XY coordinates, which show here. Also, the XY coordinates are referring to the midpoint of the sprite, which is usually kind of in the middle of them. You can change that if you want to make sure that it's like maybe you want the XY coordinates to point to the feet or whatever on it. So I've got my little sprite here. I'm going to go to costumes, and this button to the right sets the costume's midpoint. So if I want to be referring to his front foot as his costume center or his XY coordinates, I can do that. So now you notice how he popped up, because his XY coordinates are set for his foot. So now I'm going to go back to scripts, and I'm going to set his XY coordinates, and they should match pretty close here. If I move my cursor over to his foot at the bottom right, you're going to see that these numbers change as my cursor moves, and that number is almost identical to what you're going to see over in the Go To XY coordinate box. So I'll put that in place, and now when I start, this is an interesting little bit of information that I hadn't anticipated when I reset his costume center. So I'm going to go change that back. And put his costume center back there. Now we'll check it out, see if it works. Okay, I've got the issue fixed here. Took me a few seconds to see it. Costume center has to be changed for each of the sprites. So one more time. Set that one. And now I'll set this one somewhat about the same location, and we'll run it and see. Now he's doing a more even movement there. So sorry about the little glitch there, but that just shows you that you got to do some problem solving when you're working here with the cat in the different costumes, and you have him switching costumes. You have to change the costume center for both costumes. If I was just having the cat move and I wasn't having him change the costume, I would only have to do that for the one one costume that I was using. But hopefully that's not confusing to you. If it is, let me know. But if you change the costume center on one costume, you'll need to change it on the other costume if you're using animations. Okay, now I want to talk about another little issue that people have had questions about, and it's the use of sound. Sound can be a little confusing. For one thing, when you go to sound, the only sound that shows up initially is the pop sound. When you go to want more sounds, you have to go to sound, go to the library, and pick some sounds. And each time you pick them, they will show here. I've picked a cymbal sound, just a real quick one, and I've picked a dance music sound, which is a little bit longer and can be a little tricky to place in. Oops, let me pause that one. You can also record a sound and you can get sounds on file. So if you are using Sounds Abound from the AEA Online Resources, you could get sounds from there too. But I'm going to go back to my script. You guys recognize this from the animation practice. I've got the little guy walking, and he's going to do a repeat of 30, and he's going to be moving and changing costumes. So here's how it's set up initially. He's doing his little walking. And if I want to put a sound in there, I can pull over a sound block, put it in the repeat, and I'm going to pick the pop, which is the default one. And I clicked on the wrong one first, so it's playing both of those. So I'm going to stop that. Okay. So let me back up and repeat that. I'm going to pull over the sound. I'm going to change it to pop first. Now I'm going to put it over here, and I'm going to play. And he does a little pop walking across. And that works out okay. He's doing it 30 times, but it's a short sound. Also, if I go and switch it to the crash cymbal and play it, that works out pretty good too. But what happens when I try a longer song? Let's go to dance music and click it. It's kind of distorted, and then when he stops moving you hear it, but it's still playing. Sometimes when you have sound in a loop, especially if it's a longer sound, it might end up being distorted, and it can kind of interfere with the action sometimes. So I'm going to pull it out of the loop, and I want it to start, I want it to be playing the whole time that he's moving, so I'm going to put in another when clicked event. You can have several things happening for a sprite at the same time, and if you want them all to happen at the same time, you want to use the when clicked block over and over. So now we're going to listen to it. I'm going to click this one, this green flag, and now it's playing while he's walking. And I could have it play for a certain amount of time and then stop the script, but you get the idea. But if you've got a longer sound that you want to have playing when an action's occurring, don't put it in the loop, have it be out when you are doing the green flag clicking. Okay, one last thing that I want to show, and I just want to review it with you. It's the backpack, and I know that you guys are familiar with this from watching a little bit of information about it in the videos, but it's easy to forget about it because the backpack is down towards the bottom, and you have to click on the triangle to open it up. And what that allows you to do is drag scripts and sprites from any project that is shared, and then you can use them over and over again. Like if I have sounds that I like and I don't want to keep going to the sound tab and looking for them, I can put them down here. I have a sprite of a cat that my granddaughter drew for me that's down here too. And I have an avatar of myself, so if I wanted to, I could just drag it out and have it be in any project that I want. And if I have a script attached with it, then the script follows. So this is a sprite of myself that I did with an activity where I was introducing myself, and so you see that it's got all the script with it. So you have to be careful if you're putting a sprite down here. It's nice sometimes to have that script come with it, but if you don't want that, then you can right click and delete it at any time and then put in your own script. The same thing, you can bring in a script sometimes. So if you have a sprite that you want to have a script attached to, you can just bring in that script. Get this way. There we go. Put it in the script area, and then you can have it be up here. Now this is one about starting as a clone. This is going to look a little bit interesting, but it's not going to work necessarily because this isn't a standalone script. So I'm going to get rid of that one. I can just drag it over here to get rid of it. But if there was another script here, I could do that. If I wanted to, I could drag the script from this sprite over onto me. So I'm going to right click on it. I'll duplicate and click on, and now I have the same code and everything here. The only thing that I might want to change is the XY coordinates. So pull that down, toss that one. I'm going to position me here, and I'm going to, it's going to look a little bit different because my costume doesn't show me walking, but I'm going to go to motion and get my XY coordinates and put it up here. And so now before I click on the green flag to show the two animations, I'm going to shrink both of these sprites down, otherwise they'll appear on top of each other. So I'm just going to use the shrink button up here. There's other ways to shrink your sprite and make it smaller. I'm just going to click on mine a few times, and then I'll shrink the boy sprite a few times. And then I'll click the green flag to show the animations. The same script, just a different starting point, and the costumes are slightly different in what the animations show. So here goes. Okay, and pick a different script for that sprite. So hopefully this makes sense to you. We talked about the sound. I'll go back here. We talked about how to bring in sound with this sprite and the different things to do for the different lengths of sounds. Again, sometimes sounds will be a little weird or distorted when they're used in a repeat loop, and this is a known issue, so it may be getting worked on. We talked about how to layer so that you can move your sprite. You can have one sprite be back one layer, one back two layers, and one on the front, so that you can make it look like you're going between the sprites. We also talked a little bit about costume centers, and you saw where I forgot to change the costume center on one of the costumes and what that did. So if you change costume center, you would do it on both of the sprites if you're switching back and forth for animation. And then again, we talked about the backpack, and for example, in games like this, the simple collide game. Sometimes in a game it's nice to copy some of the simple things like scoring or cloning of an object. So in this case, with this sprite, I would want to copy the sprite and get the script with it, and then try this out on my own. If you have any questions about anything that you saw in this video, please let me know. And again, any questions with anything in the course. Thank you.